Please subscribe.
The Honda Insight is back, though it has more in common with the Civic than it does with the two prior generations of its namesake. Honda chose to revive the Insight name for a variety of reasons. The main intent is to draw connections between this new, American-assembled Insight and the first-generation model that beat the ubiquitous Toyota Prius to the US market back in 1999. In the eco-community, the Insight name has some street cred. However, the new Civic roots have advantages of their own. The new Insight is a traditional sedan, rather than some wedge-shaped hybrid hatchback. It looks like a normal car and Honda thinks this will grant the Insight broader appeal. We recently took to the roads around Minneapolis, Minnesota in a fully loaded 2019 Insight Touring to see how normal it really is. True to its roots, Honda's little hybrid is still a little weird. The Insight is powered by a smaller version of Honda's third-generation, two-motor hybrid system. It features a compact 1.5-liter Atkinson cycle gasoline engine that produces 107 horsepower and 99 pound-feet of torque. But this engine doesn't actually drive the wheels most of the time. Instead, the 1.5-liter mill mostly spins a small motor generator that recharges the Insight 60-cell lithium-ion battery pack and juices a second, larger 129 horsepower electric propulsion motor that sends 197 pound-feet of torque to the front wheels. A lock-up clutch can engage to send torque from the gasoline motor directly to the driven wheels, but only during light cruising at highway speeds or when you totally mash the throttle. Working together, total system output is stated at 151 horsepower and 197 pound-feet of torque, not much different from what the propulsion motor does on its own. Because the gasoline engine isn't connected to the wheels, there's an odd, CVT-like effect to the drive. You press the gas pedal and hear the engine rev, but it's out of sync with the resulting acceleration. The note just sort of climbs and then hangs discordantly. However, the e-motor is way more responsive than a traditional continuously variable transmission could ever hope to be, so you don't feel any lag between your toe on the pedal and what you sense at the seat of your pants. In other words, around town, the Insight sounds laggy, but feels responsive and torquey like an F. It's really nice and also really awkward, but it doesn't take long to get used to the sensation. By the end of my second day of testing, I only noticed the engine's sound weirdness under hard acceleration. Like an F, however, the Insight tends to run out of steam at high speeds, where it can feel a tad underpowered. Overall, the Insight returns solid performance, especially at city speeds, where the e-motor is in its element. More importantly, it promises fuel economy that's right up there with the best of its class. The EPA estimates the 2019 Insight LX and X models should return an impressive 55 miles per gallon city, 49 miles per gallon highway, and 52 miles per gallon combined. The heavier, top-level touring model brings those numbers down slightly to 51 city, 45 highway and 48 miles per gallon combined. At their greenest, the Hyundai Ioniq Blue and Toyota Prius Eco just barely edge out the Insight with claims of 58 and 56 combined miles per gallon, respectively. The Insight might not offer best-in-class numbers, but it's among the best. The Insight features 4 drive modes: Normal, Sport, Econ and F. There's not much difference between Normal and Econ. The default setting is already pretty eco-tuned, and F is of limited use outside parking lots and driveways given the Insight's small battery pack. The Sport setting gives a gratifying sharpening of the throttle response, but there is a fuel economy cost. Sport mode also pipes electronically generated faux engine noise into the cabin when accelerating, which just draws attention to the aforementioned off-putting sound. This sound enhancement feels totally unnecessary. Paddle shifters are standard, odd for a car that only features 2 single-speed transmissions, but they're not used to change gears. Rather, the paddles are used to toggle between 3 levels of regenerative braking. So as I approached a stop sign or began a coast downhill, I could fiddle the paddles to set an appropriate amount of regen. It's not quite the one-foot driving that you get with many pure revs, but I found the feature novel and fairly useful. Drive modes and paddles are fun to toy with, but I didn't end up needing any of that to reach the 52 mpg mark during my testing. I just left the inside in its normal drive mode and drove it like a normal car, and good fuel economy just sort of happened, no tricks or hypermiling necessary. That is, perhaps, the most impressive part of this whole package is that Civic hybrid. Beneath the mostly unique sheet metal, the third-generation inside is based on the current Honda Civic. The wheelbase and track are the same, length and width are similar, and both cars use the same McPherson strut front and 5-link rear suspension. The inside is just a little more spacious, with 97.6 cubic feet of passenger space compared to the Civic sedan's 95.0, but I think that's largely due to differing dashboard designs. More interesting is that the inside matches the Civic's trunk space at 15.1 cubic feet. A smaller battery for this generation has allowed Honda to move the 60-cell unit out of the trunk and under the rear seats. This means there's no battery bump and that the inside retains the same rear seat trunk pass-through as the Civic. The inside's engineers made a few tweaks to the Civic's platform and suspension. The cabin is quieter thanks to increased sound deadening, a retune of the rear suspension, and, of course, the quieter hybrid powertrain. On the road, the inside largely rides and handles like its sibling. The hybrid is a hair more comfortable and softer around the edges, but not by much, and still manages to feel plenty nimble in most situations, despite being about 150 to 230 pounds heavier, depending on trim. Standard Honda Sensing driver aids. The Honda Sensing suite of driver aid technologies is standard on all Insight models, and that's great news. That means even the base LX model comes with adaptive cruise control with low speed following, forward collision warning with collision mitigation braking, lane keeping steering assist with road departure mitigation and traffic sign recognition. Also standard is a rear view camera with a dynamic trajectory overlay that moves with the steering wheel to show a predictive path when reversing. Upgrade to the XR Touring model to add Honda's Lane Watch camera system, which fills the infotainment display with a view into the blind spot on the passenger side when the right turn signal is activated. I'm not the biggest fan of the system. I'd rather just have a conventional always-on blind spot system with simple warning lights that work on both sides, but I guess the camera is better than nothing. Honda Link Infotainment X and Touring models also step up to a large 8-inch Honda Link infotainment system, replacing a pretty basic 5-inch display audio setup in the LX. I love the placement of this larger display, which sort of blends the modern popped-out tablet look with a low placement on the dashboard that's easy to reach while driving. And like Honda's newest models, the inside features a true volume knob rather than the terrible capacitive swipe zone found in the Civic. The infotainment software reminds me of a more colorful, easier-to-read version of Volkswagen's current cabin tech, with its large, icon-based home screen and standard Android Auto and Apple CarPlay compatibility. The similarities stop there, as the Honda system goes on to feature a high level of customization, allowing drivers to reorganize the entire home screen and to store the 3 most commonly used functions on a shortcut bar that's always visible at the top of the screen. Touring models also add onboard navigation. It's pretty good software, but after the traffic system failed to account for the various roads and exits closed due to extensive construction around my Minneapolis staging area, I ended up defaulting back to the more accurate Google Maps via Android Auto to get me home in a timely manner. The Link part of Honda Link refers to the onboard 4G LTE connection, subscription required, that powers a suite of native apps for audio streaming and more, as well as enabling Wi-Fi hotspot connectivity for passengers' mobile devices. Finally, a large color display shares the instrument cluster with a traditional physical speedometer. With a scroll wheel on the steering wheel, I was able to fly through a wide range of information about economy, driver aid features, infotainment and more. No, it's not as gee-whiz as VW's full digital cockpit, but I was still impressed. The unhybrid powertrain sounds weird and takes some getting used to, but I really enjoyed the way the 2019 Insight felt on the road. Civic sharp handling and a healthy dose of electric torque combined with lofty but easily achievable fuel economy estimates, all wrapped up in handsome sheet metal. For the most part, the Insight just blends in with other cars. There are only 3 or 4 hybrid badges on the exterior. There's no battery bump in the trunk. There's no weird Starship Eco car design. This is a car that doesn't rub its green car cred in anyone's face. I can appreciate that, and I think buyers will too. The 2019 Honda Insight will start at $23,725, including $895 destination charge for the base LX with Honda Sensing, 55 miles per gallon city, and a passable cabin tech setup. $24,995 steps you up to the X with the excellent 8-inch Honda Link infotainment and keyless entry, the sweet spot in the lineup for value. The all-in touring model tops the line, adding larger 17-inch wheels, navigation, a power moonroof, dual-zone climate controls, leather-trimmed and heated power front seats, and more for a still affordable $28,985. But remember, it'll also cost you a few miles per gallon due to the increased weight. The 2019 Honda Insight arrives in dealerships later this month. It may resurrect a previous moniker, but this well-rounded newcomer is a Civic hybrid.